Hello everybody and happy Video Monday coming to you on a Wednesday. Sorry about that. What can I say? I'm human, I guess. It's been a very busy week. Anyways, I hope you guys are well. Today I want to talk to you about intermittent fasting. Somebody in my group asked if I would go over specifically the pros and the cons of adopting this type of eating style. So that's what I'm going to do for you today. So as with anything that you embark on, whether it is, a elimination diet or a low carb diet or a specific type of a weight loss program, I really think it's important to not adopt a cookie cutter kind of approach. So if you hear about something and you're like, oh, wow, that was very convincing. That sounds really good. I'm going to do that. I would suggest that you don't just jump like that into anything. Really stop and take some time to meditate and to reflect on whether that thing really suits your lifestyle, if it suits your personality, that kind of thing. So that's how I really want to start this video, because I believe intermittent fasting is pretty amazing, but I don't think it's amazing for everybody. And with anything, you guys, whatever your goal is, let's say you have the goal to lose weight. There's not only one way to lose weight. Yes, you do have to usually adapt some kind of a program that's going to keep your calories in check. I don't believe it's as black and white as calories in, calories out. You should count everything. But there is going to be, there is something to be said for the law of thermodynamics. If you're eating a lot more than your body needs all the time, you are going to gain weight. And you'll know that by how your body looks. So there's something to it. But I don't believe in necessarily counting, and I do think that that can actually cause the opposite effect for a lot of people, not everybody. So as with everything, it depends. That should become my motto. It depends. I say that all the time, but it really is true. It depends. Okay, so there's more than one way to lose weight or gain muscle or whatever it is that you want to achieve. And you have the right to, achieve whatever, or to work towards whatever it is you desire in terms of your body and your health. So intermittent fasting, in my opinion, is amazing. Here are some of the pros. Intermittent fasting can be helpful for increasing our insulin sensitivity, which is an important metabolic marker and really can help determine how much carbohydrates somebody can tolerate. It can also be helpful in terms of getting a good gauge of how we're managing our blood sugar. So it can help improve your insulin sensitivity. It can also help to prevent and fight certain diseases. Some research points that intermittent fasting can be incredible for both preventing and reversing diabetes and cancer. So a lot of theory and research makes mention that cancer runs on sugar. So if we are becoming better metabolizers of sugar and carbs, and if we are also lowering our carbs, which usually happens automatically with intermittent fasting, then our rates or incidence or likelihood of getting cancer could go down. Now again, let's say your goal in life is to avoid getting cancer. There's more than one way of doing that, right? But this is one way. Intermittent fasting can also help you control your food intake, which would, in effect, cause you to move into a calorie deficit. So if you're in a calorie deficit, usually you will lose weight. Again, it depends, but this is often the case. So however you decide to get yourself into that calorie deficit, it could be by going plant-based, it could be by doing more exercise, it could be by employing a strategy like intermittent fasting. But yeah, intermittent fasting usually for some, well, not usually, it depends. Intermittent fasting for many people can really help them to control their calorie intake because you're eating your food in a smaller window of time. So that might give you more the sensation, of being more full. It might also, prevent things like overeating at night. So let me back up for 1 second. So intermittent fasting is basically where you choose to eat all of your day's food in a small window of time. So the most popular method of intermittent fasting is something called the 16 and 8. And this is where people fast for 16 hours and then they eat for 8 hours. So for example, you could eat all of your day's worth of food between the hours of 12 and 8 p.m. So you are essentially, eliminating breakfast and just eating in the middle of the day. And the reason that this works well for a lot of people is that food is innately appetizing. So every time you eat, you're going to kind of want to add a little bit more to that. So if you're only eating 2 to 3 times a day versus 6 or 7, there's a lot less chances or opportunities, I should say, to like grab an extra of that or a tablespoon of that, because all that little bit of this and that adds up, right? So this is why it tends to help people maintain that calorie deficit, because they're going to eat 3 times a day and then they're going to close up shop. The kitchen closes, it's 8 o'clock, donezo. Okay, so it can help weight loss because it can help you to control your food intake and your portion sizes and stuff. Also, when you're eating all your food within 8 hours as opposed to, 14 hours or however you eat, maybe you eat from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., that's a lot longer, you have more, for some people, you feel, more full. So if you're eating 3 big meals, you'll, have that chance of like you eat your meal and you're like, ooh, I'm satisfied, like I'm full. Versus if you're eating like all day long, you never really have that sensation perhaps of being full and really being satisfied. So this can be a pro for a lot of people. A lot of people really like that feeling of full and satisfaction and that type of thing. Intermittent fasting has also been shown to promote human growth hormone in our bodies. So human growth hormone is it's known as the youth hormone. And what this hormone does is it is very anti-aging. It actually helps the body to burn fat, and it can be also helpful for building muscle. So it's a good thing to have around. And intermittent fasting has been shown to increase levels of human growth hormone. So those are the main pros of this eating strategy that came to my mind. Now, when it comes to the downside, I think for some people, intermittent fasting can be very triggering. So let's say, for example, you have a history of eating disorder of any kind, whether it be over-restriction or binge eating or anything, any type of eating disorder. You may find this to be a bit of a trigger for you because it's giving you this set of rules to follow where, what you really need, if you have a history of having an eating disorder, you really need to work on redefining or reestablishing your relationship with food. So this usually requires that you let go of the rules for a while and that you really start to learn how to listen to your body. Not an easy thing to do. It takes consciousness. It takes being present. It takes being really mindful. But this is where I think people with eating disorders need to start. They need to take away the rules. They need to take away the good food and bad food lists from their mind. They need to, not worry about I'm only going to eat this time, or I'm only going to eat that much, or I'm only going to eat this amount of carbs and that amount of fats. Opposite way you want to go. So for somebody with an eating disorder or a history of that, I think intermittent fasting could be a trigger for those types of control tendencies that are very strong in people with eating disorders. Okay? Also, and kind of furthermore to that point, intermittent fasting can cause binge eating, even in people who don't have eating disorders. I've had some clients say that they find that when they do, when it is time to eat, so they've been waiting for 12 p.m. When 12 p.m. comes and it's time to eat, they often will overeat. So they'll eat more than they ever would have if they had eaten at, a breakfast and then a smaller lunch or whatever. So again, it comes down to your personality. For some people, it can set them up to actually eat more at their meals because they were, essentially too hungry by the time they went to eat, or because they were ignoring their hunger signals. So they were hungry, but they're like, no, I'm waiting. It's not my time to eat yet. I'm waiting. And then they just go crazy. So if this is something that you try and that is happening for you, then that's a pretty good sign that, it might not be the best way for you to go. That doesn't mean, you could try it for a bit because maybe your body would adapt and adjust. There is absolutely, I would say, an adaptation that needs to happen to this. So at first you're going to feel really, really awful going longer without food, but usually that changes for people as they as they get used to fasting. Okay, so give it a couple weeks, but after a couple weeks, if you're having this all the time, I don't think it's, necessarily the best approach for you. Intermittent fasting for women can pose some challenges. So it can cause hormone imbalances, and this is mainly because fasting can trigger the starvation response in our bodies, and it can disrupt the levels of certain hormones in our brain, things like leptin and ghrelin, and these hormones are really important in terms of our appetite regulation. So intermittent fasting can cause women to have binging tendencies sometimes, and intermittent fasting can also cause the loss of menses. So it can cause women to lose their periods, which isn't a good thing. So this is something just to watch with yourself. If you are intermittent fasting and 3 months into it, your period stops, that might be something to look at. My last con that came to mind was that intermittent fasting could interfere with social events. It could also really benefit your social events. I didn't mention that on the pro side of things. So if you're somebody who really enjoys a big dinner and you love going out and letting go a little bit and enjoying some wine and a delicious meal and even some dessert or whatever, then sometimes people love intermittent fasting for that reason, because they can choose to have, a smaller amount of food at the beginning of their window and then have a big meal. For other people, it could be problematic. Maybe you're somebody who really likes to have breakfast with your family, but you've decided to skip breakfast. Or maybe you find that you need breakfast in the morning, but that means you kind of have to lose the dinner meal. Well, that might not work because maybe you really like also to have dinner with your family. So again, really look at your life and what your preferences are and adapt the way that you eat to fit your life. That's the most important thing. And there are so many ways to do that. And there is more to eating than just the contents that are on your plate. And it changes as well from day to day. Now, some of you may be wondering, what is my personal experience with intermittent fasting? So I have a long history of experimenting with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting was something that forever I loved. I did it all the time. I did it every single day. In fact, for probably 10 years. I found that it worked for me in a lot of these ways that I mentioned. I never have an appetite in the morning, so it was very easy always for me intuitively to skip breakfast. And interestingly, I see this in my whole family, my mom, my sisters, even my niece. Nobody wants to eat in the morning, so it could be partly just the way that we are. But that made it really like appealing to me personally. And then I also have always had way more appetite at dinner. I could eat a big breakfast and a big lunch and I still want to eat dinner. I like dinner the best. So for me, intermittent fasting was really appealing that way. But at times in my life during that period where I was experimenting with this, if, for example, so intermittent fasting or fasting of any type is a form of stress. And you don't want to put too many stressors on your plate at once. So, for example, let's say you're going through a divorce and you're also working an insane amount of hours and you're exercising a ton and you're dieting. All of these are forms of stress. So you don't want too much stress in your life, or that's going to cause a whole other array of issues for you. And for me, what I found is that intermittent fasting at times has worked beautifully, and at times it was just like making me a hot mess. It was not working. My hormones were off. My appetite was off. And that, I think, is because my stress was too high, and I had to work first on dialing that in before I worried about the times that I was eating. There are sometimes things that are bigger and more important that need to be addressed. So essentially, intermittent fasting for me has sort of come in and out, and I've always played with it, and I'm really excited because hopefully, and I'm really going to be working on this hard the next couple months, in the new year, I'm going to be launching a program. And this program is going to incorporate a specific style of intermittent fasting that I have kind of not really pioneered, but it's a variation of intermittent fasting that is my own and that I think is amazing for avoiding the cons and getting all the pros. So I'm super excited to share that with you guys in the coming months, and I trust that it's going to be a really big help to a lot of you who have dabbled in intermittent fasting and really loved certain things, but then other things you're like, I don't know if this is really working. I just want to say one more thing because I forgot. On the pro side of thing, intermittent fasting is super powerful for your brain. So once you adapt and you're not like dependent anymore on sugar and carbs and glycogen, and you've become a little bit more of what's called a fat burner, you can go longer periods of time without food and not feel like, oh, I have no energy, or I'm bonking, or I'm crashing. You'll become more efficient. And when that happens, your brain is a lot clearer. So the brain fog lifts. And this is something that I really love about intermittent fasting. And I think that you will enjoy that benefit. And I believe that my program will offer you that, but without those negative side effects like the hormone issues and, the binge eating type of thing. And we don't want that stuff. That stuff can get really messy. You don't want that in your life. So as always, thank you for watching. I'm sorry that this is probably really long. Oh God, it's funny. I think of whenever I'm doing these videos and I realize that how long I've been going, I think back on to my dad. My dad used to leave messages on my machine, and the message, every time he would be talking, and it would run out. And then he would call back and he would talk more and it would run out. He would have to leave like 7 messages to say what he wanted to say. And so I'm sorry that I ramble. I hope it doesn't bore you. I hope you're not ever like sitting there on the other side of this being like, Jesus, would she just get it out and get it done? Thanks for watching. Have a great day. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Oh, If you haven't joined my group, please do so. TESHIA'S GROUP on Facebook. Just search it in the search bar and join my group. There's going to be lots of cool stuff coming your way in the coming months. And for all of you who gave your request this week for the video Monday, this upcoming week and next week, I'm going to be in London and I'm going to be in Spain actually, and I'm going to have quite a bit of time during the day to be on the computer. So all of your requests, I'm going to try to get to all those in the next couple weeks. And yeah, I'll either do a video or I'll just do a written post, but I'm going to answer all your stuff. So if you're not in the group already, join the group. It's an awesome, awesome place where people are supporting each other and sharing information. And yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And I'd like you there too. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye, everybody.